call the meeting to order. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that our meetings in our neighborhoods here at UBC are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. So with that, I'll start us off with the approval of the agenda. Could I have a motion that the board approve the February 18th, 2025 open session agenda as circulated?
I so move.
Okay. Ron, seconded. Jake? Any questions or amendments to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor? Okay. Looks like I just want to make sure that I can see Sandy and Yambo.
Not yet.
Okay, so he's not currently present. So the motion passes, and I'll try to keep track of the voting. And hi, Sandy. I don't know if you can see me waving, but hello. All right, and then approval of the minutes.
I'd like to propose that Chris distribute the minutes when we have a meeting within 2 weeks afterwards, so everybody can get their comments to him prior to putting the agenda of the following meeting.
Yeah, Chris, I think you were aware of that proposal, and it sounds like logistically that's fine. Yep. Okay. Great. So noted, and it seems that there's no objection to that. All right. A motion that the board approve the January 21st, 2025 open session meeting minutes as circulated. Jake, seconded by Evan. Okay. All in favor? All right. Motion passes. All right, so now moving on to external reports and presentations. We have a presentation on the TransLink Burrard Peninsula Area Transport Plan, Phase 2 consultation. And this is Drew Ferrari, I believe. And Drew is there, so I'll turn things over to Drew, and thank you for joining us.
Drew, I don't think we could hear you for some reason.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
There we go. Sorry, I was having this problem earlier. Thank you very much for inviting us today. I'm going to turn it over straight away to our lead planner on the project. It's Iona Bonamy, who will be giving the presentation today. I'm going to be invisible, actually. I'll be back here just taking some notes of your comments. Thank you very much. And over to Iona.
Thanks, Drew. I'm just going to share my screen so we can quickly go to the slide deck here. I hope you can see it. So yeah, well, thank you for having us back. We are excited to share what we had heard from our first phase of engagement. We took the feedback that we had gathered from many individuals, including this group about a year and a half ago. We took that away, and now we've developed some draft bus service changes and active transportation changes as well, and love to get your feedback on that. Today, I'm just going to share high level some of the bus service changes that we're looking at because we only have 5 minutes. There's going to be a lot more detail that you can find on our project website. So I'll just jump right into it. For those of you who may not be familiar with what an area transport plan, I'll just briefly go over what it is. It's a deeper dive into transportation issues, opportunities, and priorities at a sub-regional level. We are looking at transit, in particular local bus service, and also walking and cycling and roads. And we're generally focused on network level changes as opposed to operational changes. So we're looking at bus route changes as opposed to like where bus stops would be located. Our approach has involved a lot of technical analysis, a lot of public engagement with internal teams, with Carol's team, and with many interested parties. And our planning horizon is about 15 years. We're looking at things that could happen maybe in 2 years or so, but up to 15 years. And generally, an ATP takes about 2 years to complete. In this case, our study area is very large, so we are taking about 3 years to complete it. And now that you know what an ATP is, this is how it fits into the area, the other plans that we have at TransLink. At the regional level, we have our Transport 2050, which is our regional transportation strategy. And then we have our 10-year priorities that have been identified in the Access for Everyone plan. And then the ATPs fit under that. They are where we identify the sub-regional priorities, and they provide a blueprint for what goes into our investment plans. Now, these three types of plans are unfunded. What gets funded are our investment plans. So that is what's underneath the area transport plans, and they identify the specific expenditures over the next 10 years. What we heard in phase 1 for transit was that there are some areas without convenient access to transit service, as well as some areas where the bus routes are really long and circuitous and difficult to understand. This includes areas like South Vancouver. We also heard there are many places that are growing, like UBC, and that require more integrated bus service. Of course, we have some major transit projects as well coming down the pipe, including the Broadway subway. And then we also heard need for safe, reliable, and accessible transit service. A lot of our routes are overcrowded, and there's a desire for more travel time, more transit travel time, and more hours of service. And in terms of active transportation, we heard that there is a need for safety and accessibility improvements around our transit stations. So things like wider sidewalks, safe pedestrian crossings, more traffic calming. For cycling, people said that we need a complete urban bikeway network and improve connections between urban centers, and as well, greater access to bike parking and shared mobility options. So from there, we developed a series of goals. For transit, our first goal is around advancing a transit network that provides direct and efficient transit connections. Secondly, is to integrate our bus network with our major transit services and our major growth areas. And thirdly, we want to provide a transit service that is readily available, accessible, comfortable, reliable, and safe. So based on those goals and based on the feedback we have received, we have developed a number of bus route changes, over 60 bus route changes, and we've kind of organized them into these 13 packages. I won't go through all of them today. I've highlighted 6 here that I think would be most relevant to the group, and I won't cover all 6 here today, but you can go into our survey and our accompanying discussion guide for more details about each of these packages. And I'll go through just a few today. The first is package A. This one is looking at the subway integration piece. So the Broadway subway is planned to open by 2027. As part of that, we are looking at changing the eastern terminus of the 99 bus B line. So that would just operate between UBC and Arbutus Station. For the local bus routes 4 and 7, we want to improve service levels to maintain that connection between UBC and downtown. The 9, the local bus service on Broadway, we are hoping to extend more of those westbound trips to UBC and start more of those eastbound trips at UBC. One change that we're also looking to make is removing Route 14. This is a route that connects UBC to downtown, but there are other routes, as I mentioned, the number 4 and number 7 that also connect UBC and downtown. So there can be confusion because of those routes, duplications. So we're looking to make it simpler, and the hours that would normally go towards the 14 would be reallocated to other bus services like the 4 and the 7 and the other routes serving east-west as well. Package B is looking at kind of the longer term integration with the Broadway subway. So in the longer term, we are potentially looking at splitting Route 4 so that there would be a western route and an eastern route. The western route would go from UBC to BCC Clark Station. And then the eastern route would go from Waterfront Station to Kootenay Loop. And this would help improve reliability along the 4 and provide more east-west service along 4 and 6 Great Northern Way corridor. And then for the 42, we're looking at extending the eastern end to South Granville Station via Cornwall. One more package that I'll quickly go over is some new express routes that we're looking at. In particular, for the area that you may be interested in, we're looking at a new express route along the 49 and a new express route along the 25. And these routes would have fewer bus stops, so people traveling along them would be able to get to their destinations faster, and they would be operating alongside the current local bus service already. And then finally, for cycling, what we're looking at is what we have done is worked with local governments to identify gaps in our regional cycling network, which we call our major bikeway network, and within our urban centers as well. And we've identified these gaps that are in pink that are high priority to address. And what we're asking for feedback on in our survey is, what do you think of these priority gaps? Which one do you think we should focus on when we're working with our local government? So we're asking for feedback. What are those top priorities? Out of these, I think we've identified 45 or 46. We're asking for feedback on what are your top 5. And I'll just end it here by kind of just going over our project. We are in our second phase of engagement, as I mentioned. Once we've gathered the feedback, we will be taking that, and that will help refine our final actions and priorities to put in the Burrard Peninsula Area Transport Plan. And the plan is to finalize the ATP in early 2026. And I've also included a link here to our survey. You can go there and take the survey, and we would appreciate it if you can share it with your network as well. And I'll stop it there. I'll open up the floor if there are any questions.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Iona. And questions from the board? Ron?
Yeah, I have a question. It relates to the interaction at Arbutus on the new Broadway line. When people get off their bus, are they going to have to cross the street? Is there going to be a proper loop for them and an underpass for them to walk to and from the station?
From the station to the 99 bus stop, is that what you're referring to?
That's correct.
Yeah, so the station right outside the subway station above ground will be the bus loop, and that's where the buses will be stopping and picking up and unloading the buses. So people will just have to go above ground, get out of the station, and they should be able to walk relatively short distance. They don't have to cross the street or anything. They will be able to get on the bus.
Okay, well, the station will be on the north side of Broadway.
Yes.
So people come from the UBC and the 99 going east. Will that 99 bus make a left turn on Arbutus to go into this loop?
Yes. Yeah, I believe that is the circulation pattern. They'll be making a left onto Arbutus and then turning a right to get into that bus loop.
Just one more question. I do with route bus 99. Is 9? I'm sorry. Is 9 going to run over the Broadway line?
Yes, the 9 will continue as a local service. And so right now, some of the trips end at UBC or start at UBC, and we're hoping more of those will do that.
Okay, and then I have a hand up from Sandy coming to us online.
Yes, thank you, Igo, and thank you, Inoa. I have two questions. First is when will the Broadway subway open? Second one is what is the route 33? That is important route, especially if you take bus from route 2 to the McDonough and 16. And we will take route 33 to along 16 to UBC. So I think that is also important route rather than the number 4, 99, others. Thank you.
So the answer to your first question, so the province is managing the Broadway subway project, and the timeline right now is for it to open in 2027. So, and then the answer to your second question, we are not looking to make any changes to Route 33 in terms of the routing, so it would stay the same. We are looking at overall kind of just service increases wherever possible. So that could include the 33. We'll be looking at where the demand is, and as areas grow, we'll be responding to that growth, hopefully with some service increases. Yeah.
Michael?
I just had a clarifying question about these packages. So I'm a little unclear as to how these packages sort of are these different types of rollouts. These package A rolls out on opening day versus future, and there are 33 of these packages. But
13.
These are all 13.
Yeah, 13.
But they're all
Yeah, that's a great question. So for the first package, the package A is probably the one that would happen the most immediate or most near term. The other ones, we don't have a timing for them, and they're put into these packages because they're kind of dependent on one another. One route change might require a route change for like another route, so that's why we've grouped them together and make sure there are no gaps in the overall network. So that's why they're grouped in that way. When you're filling out the survey, I'll just clarify that in the first or second page of the survey, you'll be able to select which route you want to comment on. So let's say you want to comment on the 3 or the 99. You'll click on those routes, and then you'll be taken to survey pages for each of those routes to provide feedback on. You'll have a map that shows the current routing, and then another map that shows it's the same map. The same map will show the current and the proposed alignment for the routes. And then it'll also tell you which packages each of those routes fit into.
Great, that helps a lot. Thank you very much.
Okay.
In regards to package A and our immediate area here at UBC, has there been a study that has occurred on the impact of particularly the transit in the morning and the evening, the sort of rush hour that occurs to and from campus with students, where, you know, I would say a majority of the buses in the mornings in particular are full and are at capacity, and what this particular plan, package A, how that might impact those routes.
So we do know that there is a lot of overcrowding. That is definitely apparent in our data. What this is not, I guess, what we haven't included in here is necessarily exactly what will be the frequency. We are looking to make those improvements, but we don't have those details determined yet. That will be determined closer to implementation. And that overcrowding, where it's happening, when it's happening, will be taken into account when we develop those improved service schedules.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, thanks so much, Iona and Drew, for joining us at this meeting. And as I think you can tell, our residents remain very keen to follow what's going on and to be able to provide input on these important changes to the transit system. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us. I have dropped the link for our webpage and the survey in the online chat for those who are online.
That's great. Thank you so much.
And one last thing, we also have a social media kit if that's of interest to you, if you'd like to share this more widely with your community. I'm happy to send that along too.
We'll ask the staff to take note of that. I think it would be something that would be of interest to the community. So, okay, great. All right, well,
Happy to
take
provide
care,
that.
and I guess we'll see you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, with that, we move on to the campus and community planning report. Carol?
Thanks, Eagle. The report is before you. Maybe I'll just highlight the Westbrook Place South planning process that's underway in its second phase of engagement right now. We did have an open house in the community last weekend, and there is another open house tomorrow evening for anyone who wasn't able to attend on the weekend and would like to join us tomorrow evening. There's also a survey online that you can complete, and we'll be having more conversations with this board as part of that engagement process as well. If anyone has any questions or comments on any items in the report, I'm happy to address them or take them back to the team.
Questions for Carol? I'll just ask one. I believe it was in that report you did mention the ongoing works on a UNA work yard with a precise address, 6055 Nurseries Road. I was wondering if you could just give a brief update on where we are on that.
I'm happy to, but I also know that Wegland has included that in his operations report. So do you want me to give an update or?
I include that in the landscaping report. So I'm happy to update that during the closed meeting.
We can wait for Wegland then. All right, thanks, Carol. If there are no further questions, then we'll move on to the Electoral Area A Director Monthly Report, Jen McCutcheon, and her newsletter was included in the meeting package. Jen could not be here with us at the meeting in person today. She did ask that I make an announcement related to surprise, surprise, dog regulation. So there's been some concern about off-leash dogs and dog human encounters in Pacific Spirit Park, and the Metro Vancouver has been hearing those concerns and is considering the possibility of revisiting or revising the dog off-leash regulations in the park, but there's nothing definitive yet. Jen, being very conscientious in her role as Electoral Area A Director, she had planned an event for early March. I think it was March 6th was the date, where some representatives from Metro Vancouver as well as from the UNA would present some of the measures under consideration related to dogs in Pacific Spirit Park and also in the neighborhoods. However, it seems that that's premature, and so for the moment, she's canceled that consultation or presentation / consultation for March 6th, and we'll wait until Metro Vancouver is ready to make some kind of presentation about this process. And so I'm just reporting that for the moment, but I'm glad to take questions, but I think really primarily those questions should be directed to Jen, but it looks like Ron, you have a question.
I'm a little disappointed that she canceled that meeting, okay? I use the park a lot, okay? There's a couple of groups that we take our dogs all the way down to West 4th, and we talk to a lot of people. If you're going to deal with safety in this park, you best look at some of the cyclist groups. I've seen a few situations where cyclists have run into people. This one complaint that was in the news did not take place in the area that we're talking about. So, I strongly urge, and I will write her a letter that said I don't want to wait for Metro Vancouver, I think we got to interact because that's parks used by a lot of our people. Okay. I don't want to spend I could spend all night telling you I consider it to be one of the poorest managed parks I've seen. Okay. Compared to the ones you see in the UK and the Black Forest and places like that. But I won't get into that. But she should make us alert because I had a bunch of people ready to go to this meeting. Okay. Conscientious people.
So I will relay to Jen your comments and your disappointment about the cancellation of the meeting. And I think more importantly, the need for such a meeting at some point. And so I think that your point's well taken. And this is certainly an issue relating to parks management.
The point I want to make, I don't want the parks people to come out with some, what was he saying in French, a carte blanche, a white paper, okay? This is what we want to do and then defend it without having heard from the stakeholders, not just a small minority. Because there's also a number of other issues in the park that should be dealt at the same time, okay? I think a lot of people got to be aware here that that park is full of a lot of fuel for a fire. And if we ever the dry season, that fire, it would impact us here very negatively at UNA lands.
Thanks, Ron. That's very helpful. And I will convey your comments to Jen. And I think even more, given that she is our representative, I think it would actually be helpful to reach out to her yourself and have that conversation, because I think what you're suggesting, I think she would actually agree that being kind of proactive rather than putting some only partly baked plan out there and then having to defend it is not ideal. So thanks for that. Okay, are there anything else related to Jen's electoral area A report? Okay, not hearing anything. We'll move on to the February 2025 management reports. And again, we'll go in order. So we'll start with Paul as the CAO, and then we'll work our way through. So and you can ask your questions then to each of them as they go.
So remember, I'm the appetizer.
Yes.
We'll get through the entire meal as we work our way through the report. So you're used to the cycle now on a monthly basis with the management report. My first section. I don't think there's a lot to particularly highlight on my section. Obviously, the last month has been very much dedicated to completion and development of the draft budget for next fiscal. And I did want to just, under community relations, with thanks to campus and community planning and Michael White, beginning to have some introductory meetings with Musqueam representatives. So I'll be able to report a little bit more to the board on that after we've had our first opportunity, which is coming up, I think, either this week or next week. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the CAO section of the report at this point.
All right.
I had 2 questions which I sent off to you. Did you answer them? And the questions and answers I circulated to all the management people.
I think, Ron, you can ask your questions here, and hopefully that people have had a chance to have a look. But regardless, I think they need to be asked again.
Paul, for a lot of us newcomers, all these acronyms we're not familiar with. Okay, when you mentioned UBC, CNCP, I think it would be very helpful for a lot of us new counselors that when people start using these in presentations that they use the full name first and then show us the acronym, so we can refer to what we're talking about. The second item is you refer to the February 3rd JHR meeting with Clear HR. I understand the committee met, but I haven't seen the report from the committee recommending anything. Okay.
Yeah, it's you may expect the discussion about the compensation review was done in a closed session, and that is a topic item in this evening's closed meeting as well. And you will be able to hear from the chair in terms of the discussion and any recommendation from the committee at that point.
But you will make an effort to start explaining these acronyms to us.
Yeah, absolutely. That point's been well taken, and we will watch out for that.
Okay, any other questions for Paul? Sandy?
Yes, thank you, Igor. I have two questions. First is I already put in the question document is about the recreation customer service. It's great. We have this point, customer service, included in the report. My point is, can we just add some more detailed information? For example, what the customer's concern, who from UNA is responsible for. So what is following up? So that is better for us to understand more about the residents' concerns rather than only in AGM. That is first one. Second one is
Sandy?
Yeah.
One second. So at the moment, we're on the CAO only. We're going through one at a time. So it goes the CAO, and then when we're done with that, then we'll move to communications. And then when we're done with that, we'll move to recreation, then operations, then finance. So your first question, we'll take note of it. That's a question for recreation, I believe. And,
yes.
So we'll make sure that when we get to that point in the meeting that Dave takes that question. For now, do you have any more questions for Paul and his part of the management report? So that's only the CAO part of the report.
So is the customer service not included in CAO report? I saw it's in the CAO report.
Sandy, it's Paul here. Yes, it is in the report overall, but it's in the recreation section. We're going section by section. So when we get to the recreation section, Dave can respond to your questions around the customer service.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Understand. No more. I will answer in the section part.
Okay. Yes. Well, I'll bring your question back up when we get to the recreation section for sure. So, so I think with that, we'll move on to communications and Glenda.
Hi, everybody. My report is before you. One thing that I want to highlight is that something that's a new item on the list is an expanded talk section of the UNA website front page. So this is something that we're developing with our website developers. Essentially, there'll be a lot more items that can be featured on the front page of the website so that it's up front for people to see and that they don't have to navigate to the secondary page to see it. The section will have one column, the left-hand column, which will include highlights, and then a section that has the latest news, which is similar to what appears on it now, but instead of just 3, there will be 5 items that will be at the top fold. Happy to answer any other questions about my report.
Okay, are there any questions on communications for Glenda? I think that Sandy.
Yes, thank you, Igor. On communication side, I hope if we can initiate a communication channel between our CAO and the strata councils. I put the reason in my question answers in the document. Since I heard the request from strata councils, they have interest to talk with our CAO directly, and the CAO also can get the feedback from them, also deliver the information we heard from our external part to them. So that is more efficient, effective. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback.
Can I just make a comment here? Okay, we have a committee to deal with this, our community committee, okay? And I discussed this earlier today with Paul about reaching out on a planned basis to all the stratas through the neighborhoods. So there is a plan that we're going to try to put in place to the to reach out to all these groups.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, that the Community Engagement Advisory Committee, among its things that it will be taking up as it gets started, is communications with Strata Council. So I think Sandy's comments and question here are noted.
I'm also going to look to Chris's cooperation because we have a privacy act that makes it a little difficult to get hold of some of these people. Okay.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Ron. Any other communications related questions? I do have one related to the newspaper. So you noted that the UNA will be running a couple of advertisements in the March edition, I believe was what I saw there, and that's great. I'm wondering if with the move of the newspaper to publishing print editions monthly, or at least 10 times a year, is what I believe that it's moving towards, whether there's also the opportunity for more advertising in that newspaper.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I think that the NEC should decide though is how much of its pages it's dedicating to advertising. We enjoy free advertising on the campus president. So there's also a question of how much should be allocated to the UNA versus paying advertisers. So these are things that I think would be good to discuss on at that table. But yes, absolutely, like it's something that we plan on taking advantage of.
Following up on that, do you recall, Glenda, if in the previous incarnation of the campus residents, whether UBC paid to run advertising? Because I know UBC did run advertising in that newspaper before.
Yes, that's right. They did pay.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? All right, and then with that, we move on to recreation and Dave. And Dave, do you have a note of Sandy's earlier question, or would you like her to reframe it? Okay, so Sandy, I'm going to let Dave start out by addressing your question. If he has something else he wants to begin with, though, that's totally fine. Thanks.
Yeah, so just to let you know, my report's in front of you and I can follow up with any questions. But Sandy, to address your question, on the area of customer feedback right now, we've moved to Zoho, which allows individuals to contact the UNA with any questions that we have. Those are assigned and responded to. I also get to look at that on a daily basis. At this time, the suggestion box, as noted, has been removed, as we've not been able to put a process that would allow for the consistency of it being viewed. It was replaced with persons in with questions are dealt with immediately at our front desk, or customers provided. So if somebody comes to the front desk, they will immediately go into the back and they'll grab myself, or they will grab a specific programmer or anyone that can help with that problem. If no one's available, they're provided a form to fill out with exchanged of a business card for the individual that's best to respond. When this information is then passed on to the appropriate staff member, we're looking at an average time of 1 to 2 business days for a response, with a resolution time varying depending on the needs of the feedback required, but it also generally sits between 2 to 3 business days.
Okay, are there further questions on recreation? Evan?
Two questions for you. First one is, since our community, we offer a lot of programs and lessons, right? This is a excellent job we offer to our residents. So yeah, because I'm thinking, like how do you like quantify? Like how do you analyze those like resident needs, right? Because if we offer something like residents, either they don't need it or they have constraint, they're not coming. We kind of like waste a lot of resources and money. But on the other hand, if we offer a course which is very popular, meet the customer needs, we can generate lots of revenue. So I mean, I want to hear from your approach to how to quantify this. And second question is, in the past weeks, I also met some artists. Some of them they might have interest to like running a club or something, like to like organize some events and for example like a dancing club or or something. So I want to hear about like how can they, you know, like gather support and resources from our community, and you know, like to run their activities. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, certainly, I can speak to those. In the area of programming, first thing I'd like to sort of identify is that when we come, sorry, I've been in a lot of meetings today. When we come to the programming, it's first really important to note that there's 4 levels of our programming. We have the programming that we offer that is for profit, that helps us with our budget, helps with salaries for staff and other programs that we run. We also have programming that's run in conjunction with grants or other bursaries stuff we receive. In addition to that one, we have our nonprofit programming, where what we do is we just make sure we're covering the cost of the instructor. And then we have our other subsidized programming. This is programming that is free, that we offer, and that's as high as 20% of our programming right now. I could break those numbers down for you further if you needed them. Also, in regards to reviewing the current programming that we had, in 2023, we underwent the Recreation and Cultural Review. Within that program, people were asked specifically what types of classes they're looking for, the demands of those items, and what we've done since then is actually fall into that area, and we've met 95% of those demands. We also review both on a quarterly but also yearly basis by looking at the attendance, the wait lists on those events, to be able to come back to it. So when looking at whether there's a profit or a loss on it, it's important to follow where that's been categorized. And then the secondary there is just knowing that if we have classes that have tremendous wait lists, and then we have other classes that, you know, have struggled to break even and they're identified in a certain, you know, criteria, we do make alterations to our programs to try to meet those needs. Our biggest challenge, as always, that's not a surprise, is the UNA has outgrown the amount of space that we can provide. So I hope that answers number 1. For number 2, on our website, people can submit any type of program that they wish to run, and then that program is then followed up by different individuals. Another way to do that is I've had many individuals reach out to me directly, and then I will put them in front of who they need to talk to. As far as gathering resources for that, generally what we do is we meet with those individuals, see what type of impact that they're going to have on the community. And once we've determined what that impact's going to be, we then have options from everything from allowing programs to run with instructors becoming part of our programming, to individually run programming, to external strategic partnership programming, as well as we've seen with the success of our Lunar New Year and Diwali community events that are run by them, supported by us.
Thank you, Dave. Are there other questions on recreation? Yeah, Jay.
Kind of along the lines of what Evan was asking, but it's specific to, you made a comment on page 41 of the report, where we saw a 58% decrease in room rentals from January of this year to January of last year. How do you analyze whether the program is better overall than renting out the room in terms strictly from a financial standpoint? I know we could all make arguments about the programs being, you know, better in general, but from a financial standpoint, what's better?
Programming is clearly better in most cases. Given from the study that we did, the priority for us is making sure we're meeting the needs of the community first. So again, identifying what's in that room, and that was one of the things that we had to do, is we had to look at what the simple revenue that was coming in from room rental versus access to the community and programming that they wanted. And that includes any one of that 4 levels right into subsidized programs. So we haven't looked at it from the aspect of, you know, which is going to bring in more revenue for that hour of time in a room. We've looked at what is the greater good for the community that's around.
Ron?
Okay, on page 34, the open gym number dropped from 403 to 133 for the month of January. Do you have an explanation for that, Dave?
Page 34. This is the drop from last year.
That's correct.
Yeah. More programming.
Okay.
Yeah, there was demand for more pickleball, more badminton, more basketball.
Okay. Quest, you've got the individual, Gillian Robert, or Babet, if she's French, Connected Communities Coordinator. Could you arrange a meeting with her, with the Community Engagement Committee, so we can start working on a plan?
Certainly. Yeah.
That's all. It's very simple.
Yes.
Okay, and, I've received very positive feedback on having senior pickleball. Okay, senior pickleball is a very popular thing in our neighborhood based on the genealogy of our neighborhood. And the final thing is, on page 42, you mentioned 39 requests you couldn't meet because either the room wasn't available or there was it was in competition with our booking policy. Can you give some examples of requests that would not meet our policy that you would refuse to book?
Yes, I can. Sorry. First wanted to just touch with pickleball for a moment, just to bring the board aware of this in discussions with UBC Athletics and Recreation. Starting this summer, they are going to be converting the old tennis center and part of the new tennis center to bring in pickleball participants. We've been instrumental in working with Athletics and Recreation because we cannot meet the need of all the demand of pickleball. So they've been very happy to take some of that off of us. And I'm very happy to kind of push a little bit of it their way.
Okay, Chris, can you make sure that's in the minutes? Okay.
Now to answer your second question, when a community group comes to us, a couple of things that the criteria that we have is they cannot be promoting any form of religion or business. And then secondly, they can't sell any services from within. If after those criteria, what it comes down to is if a group comes in forward, a group leader must be selected, and that group leader must meet the criteria that we have for what would be similar to a volunteer, passing a criminal record check. If there are youth in the room at any point, it has to be a vulnerable criminal record check. And then the other issue we look at is conflict with rooms. We've had a lot of groups that come forward that kind of say, we want a Tuesday night. We want the third Tuesday of every month down here in this room. Well, there's the board meeting. So we do run into that a fair amount where there's just no flexibility on the other side.
Michael?
Dave, I just want to commend you and your team for this excessive programming that goes on here. And I just want to underscore a couple of the things that I've heard in the last 5 minutes. UNA has outgrown its spatial restrictions. UNA has overprogrammed all of its spaces. We cannot meet our spatial demands. Carol, this is feedback, I think.
And later in the closed meeting, the board will be having some discussions around the Westbrook neighborhood plan expansion. And I think this is relevant information for us to bring back to that discussion. Any other questions for Dave on recreation? Oh, yeah, Dave.
Just out of the start, I didn't get to highlight something that I really wanted to highlight. Our comedy night over at the old barn was a smash hit. It was a sellout. Not only did it sell out for people in the building, they took all the beer, they took all the food. it was a sellout all around. And it was just the start of some of the stuff we're trying to do with the old barn, which is create these, community nights for a lot of people that can come out, whether that's talent shows, readings, poetry. But the comedy show was unbelievable. Tears.
Need for theater space, I hear.
Yeah. Now we just need senior pickleball comedy night with beer. So, all right. Any other questions? I guess that was it for the questions. But thanks so much, Dave, and thanks for highlighting some of these very successful programs, events, and the like. And with that, we'll move on to operations and Wegland. And I think you already know that I had a question out there about the works yard. So.
Thank you very much, Eagles. So the operations and sustainability report is before everyone, and happy to answer any questions. There are two highlights of the report that I would just like to share is in terms of looking forward, the sustainability department is working closely with our Everest consultant from Diamond Head to develop a tree management plan that will help the UNA and guide the UNA in terms of how to practically and tangibly manage our tree assets in the long run. And this is just the first step, and we expect further down the road, we will working with urban forestry to further develop the tree management plan that will give us a very healthy and long-term tree inventory results down the road. And the second item that I would like to highlight is in the operations report. So in terms of the operations report, just want to introduce the Soho desk system. So what happened is we have recently migrated all the UNA ticketing, including the support ticketing system, to a new system that is called Soho desk. And the UNA operations team has been using the Soho desk in terms of taking municipal services requests. For example, if there's flooding or if there is parking issues, our team utilize this ticketing system to respond and also to address our residents' concerns. So I have information in here in terms of how to submit the ticket. One is with the operations at una.sohodesk.ca, or alternatively, the simplest way is go to my una.ca, and then if you go to the bottom right-hand corner, there is a widget for you to support any kind of operations ticket in there. And that's it for me. Happy to answer any questions. And would you want to, in terms of the work yard, so I can briefly go over the work yard. So the UNA has been collaborating with UBC campus planning in terms of the developing of the UNA work yard. Just for context purpose, for the new board members here, the UNA currently is operating in a temporary work yard that is out in the South Campus, inside construction lot to be developed. And we expect the construction area will be developed in the next few years. So it means we need to find a new home for our municipal team that provides snow removal services, landscaping, removal services, and other municipal-like services. So in last year, we worked with UBC Campus Planning. A study has been done with our work yard. So the plan is to develop a comparable work yard that will support the UNA current as well as the future operation purpose. And the new area will be located in South Campus, down in Nurseries Row. I'm not sure if you're familiar with where about Nurseries Row is. It's actually behind Triumph. And if I may want to be more accurate, it's behind the archival building of UBC. So there is a small third mount area right now, and then down the road it would be become our new work yard. And we are still very early in terms of the planning stage and design stage. And then we are working closely with UBC in terms of the general layout. And when we have more information about the timeline, we will be happy to report back to the board. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Wegland. Are there any questions for Wegland?
I do. Okay. I have three questions. I'll go through on page 43. When you talk about the tree plan and you're working with your consultant, are you going to address the Raymond Woods ash trees on Hampton Place, is that eucalyptus hybrid that neither squirrels or birds want to live in. Is that going to be part of your review? Because they're very old trees and they are a drought-related tree and not really suitable for our climate.
Sorry, Rod, you're referring to the street trees, am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so the tree management plan is specifically target all street and park trees within the UNA area. So we are talking about Hampton, Hawthorne, Chancellor East Campus, as well as Westbrook area.
But we'll be focusing more on using native trees versus an invasive, really is an invasive species.
So the plan is I don't have an answer for you right now. So because I would have to defer that to the average consultant. But the idea is we are looking forward for more less invasive species, but more towards the natural indigenous species that we are looking at that will fit for the climate change.
Also on page 43, you talk about sustainability scholarship. BC Hydro grant. Will UNA bear any financial costs in retaining this student?
Thank you, Ron. So for this, this is a grant provided by the BC Hydro, so we do not bear any cost for that. We are working closely with campus planning to develop this project.
Just as a corollary, how much is this grant?
Unfortunately, I don't have the number. I will have to look back and get back to you on that one.
This is part of our community outreach. Page 45, the UNA off-leash park design that you're working on right now. And I would really like to think we get some more feedback from people, but I'm a firm believer because when I living in Montreal downtown, we had the Percy Molson Park. I don't want to see people who don't live on UBC coming to start using this if it turns out to be a freeze good. So I wonder if we should really consider, and most people who have dogs spend thousands of dollars, okay, on their dog. I don't think they have a lot of problems paying, say, $100 fees to use a special park for their dog to do a dump.
Thank you, Ron. Noted your input. But for the dog park, this is a public dog park, so we expect it's a neighborhood dog park as well. We expect the most of the users come mainly from the UNA residents.
Well, let's ensure they're only UNA users. I don't think anybody has a problem with a nominal fee.
Can I suggest that we wait until the dog park comes before us on the agenda before we get into the weeds?
What I'm really saying is we advance and we start to get people more involved in this. We should float this idea around.
I think I saw Jake had a hand.
No.
Okay. I have one question as well, Wigland. I think you'll recall that several months back we had an issue where there were some trees that were on a strata property that were encroaching on sidewalks that were managed by the UNA, and it was a complicated jurisdictional question how the UNA could deal with them. And could you tell me, without necessarily getting into the specifics of the case involved, how the UNA now will proceed in cases like this, where you have unresponsive stratas that have trees that are encroaching on essentially public space?
Yeah, thank you, Igor. So it's like a little more of a learning process from our end as well. So going forward, if there is an responsive or unresponsive strata, the default first step is we'll go to the title office to get the registry strata information. And then we will, based on that contact information, reach out to the strata and see if the strata is not responsive, then we will work with our UPC counterpart to provide more of a notice in terms of requesting the strata to address the pruning issue that they have.
Just could you clarify, is this something that can be done in a reasonably timely manner so that if trees are encroaching on the public realm, that this is something that could be dealt with within, a certain limited time?
Yes, thank you, Igor. So the we are looking forward for more of a 60 days noticing period in terms of to getting the tree pruning to be completed. And for the case that you mentioned, we were able to contact the strata back in January. So we are expecting a follow-up work from the strata soon.
Okay, thank you, Wegland. Are there any further questions on operations? Okay, with that, we move on to finance and Athena, and I'll just note that the budget is coming up as a separate budget item, as is the Q3 financial support report. So this is just on Athena's report here.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, directors. My report is before you as what Igor has addressed. I think my bigger report is later on in the meeting, so feel free to ask me any question if you may have.
Okay, are there any questions for Athena?
Yeah, I just have one question
on her report. And Ron, if you could just wait, I'll just make sure that I'm scoping the room, and I'll call on you. So, are any other questions? I want to make sure that we get to them. Okay, Ron.
Just one very simple question, Athena, on page 45. What's the projected cost of implementing this new HR system?
Yes, that cost is based on the number of people. We have already budgeted for this fiscal year. So part of the cost is it will be next fiscal, because they are actually, when it depends on how many people on payroll, we have to decide that number. So I think in total, the whole overall budget is like around $40,000, including everything, implementation and running the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Athena. Are there any other questions for Athena on her report? I think Sandy, sorry, I have to put my glasses on, but I think I'm seeing Sandy. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Igor. Athena, I'm not sure if you already see the question document I attached in the email.
Yes, I have seen. I will address
good.
that
Yeah,
in
that
the
will
budget
be easier.
section. Yes.
Yeah, good. Could you please answer that question? So I suppose everyone had that question, just to save time. You want me speak about that?
No, I think I will, as I mentioned, I will address that in the budget section, because that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sandy, just to remind us all that this is just the management report. And so it's the specific items that Athena included in the management report, but the budget will be another agenda item, and that's coming up shortly. And so that will be the time, I think, when you can pose your questions about the budget.
Yeah, okay. I will address that at that time.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Oops. Thanks all. Now we move to the staff work plan Q3 report and turn things over to Paul to briefly introduce the work plan.
Thank you very much, Eagle. This is another part of our quarterly reporting to the UNA board and to the community. This is specific reporting on progress that's aligned with the established strategic plan and priorities. So on an annual basis for the fiscal year, staff put together a work plan that is based on the board's strategic plan. So if you see in the attached document, the third quarter update has one column on the left, which has the goal that's laid out in the strategic plan, and then has either initiatives or projects that are aligned with that goal. The column on the right is updating the board and committee on progress towards those goals. So this is the third quarter update. I won't go through them individually. I think as outlined in the report, there's the three major highlights, which I think the board's quite aware of. The finalization and approval of the neighbors agreement, the NA 2024 as we affectionately call it, the board of directors election, which all the members here are quite intimately aware of that process. And then the last highlight is the progress we were making on the dog park, and there's some reference to that this evening. There are a number of other updates. If there are any questions, staff will be happy to respond and provide any additional information as the board needs. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions on the staff work plan, the Q3 report? Sandy?
Thank you, Igor. I just want to give the comment. I much appreciate Paul and our staff to complete this report. That gives us a whole picture of all our UNA's work. It's very helpful for us, for our directors and the residents to know our goals and also the progress. So thank you all for finishing it and sharing. Thank you.
I'll second that and also say, you know, you're certainly all very busy, and we appreciate that. Okay, I think not seeing any other questions on the work plan. We are now going to move on to the Finance and Audit Committee update, and in particular, the first item under that is the final draft of the fiscal year 2025-26 UNA annual budget report. In a moment, I'm going to turn things over to Athena to introduce the report. I just want to note in terms of procedure here, we'll start out with Athena introducing the report that she's submitted here. At that point, I'll turn to Jake, the chair of the Finance and Audit Committee, to introduce and make a resolution regarding the budget. And once that resolution is seconded, then we can have a discussion. Okay, so with that, we'll turn things over to Athena to introduce the budget.
Yes, thank you, Igor. So the final budget is before you. We have a meeting with the Finance and Audit Committee last week to go over that in very further details of all the questions that we would like to address at that time. So all I want to say that the public consultation is completed, and then in total we got I put some statistic on my report. We have less than I think a bit over 200 people viewed, 222 to be more precise. I think then the actual feedback we received is 22. So the question is before you. Yeah, feel free to yeah, I think after we consider with the Finance and Audit Committee and internally, we don't think there is any specific one that will alter and make changes for this budget, because that some of them are common, and I think some of them we will look further into it, but nothing really stands out that it will alternate the budget at this moment. So for that, we recommended the budget to be submitted to UBC. But that being said, so I would like to answer some of the questions that might have to just clear some to just bring some clarity to some of the questions that some of you might have. The difference between community support and the public engagement, they're actually two different things. The public engagement is something such as like the board meeting and then hospitality. The main reason why there is such a difference is because this year we had election. So the election normally is actually quite costly. So that's why the budget this year is quite different than next year. And then the community support as well. There is a different initiative, I think, for this the year that we are in right now compared to the budget, because we have some bigger initiative. Let's say we want to prepare for the volunteer program, and as such, those are more costly. So that's why the cost is very like there is some variation. So that's why that's not identical. But there is not, we're not cutting service, but just simply there is some initiative and there's some different major activity that we need to cover. For the second question that I have is the Westbrook Community Center and the Old Barn Community Center also need operation costs to run. So the cost mainly is for operating costs, like such as waste removal, like elevator maintenance, and then janitorial and maintenance and such. So there's quite a big category to cover all the running of the two community center. So I think so those I just want to highlight. So the last but not least is the communication. We included, as what we mentioned a few times, one of the major costs is the newspaper, and then also the website. The rest will be the consulting and then some marketing costs and such. So yeah, I think so. In high level, those are the question I think, Sandy, you would like to address. But if there's other director that might be having any question, feel free to answer. If not, I would like to pass the time to Jack. Yeah.
Okay, so next, we'll turn to Jake as the chair of the Finance Committee. And Jake, if you would like to introduce and make the motion.
Yeah, just a bit of preamble first. As chair of the Finance and Audit Committee, I'd like to report that the committee has worked with the UNA finance team, thoroughly reviewed the budget, ensuring all the expenditures, revenues and allocations align with the UNA programs, services, and overall objectives. Even if we invested more time than the committee has already put in over the short period since we've been on board, I'm confident that there would not be any material revisions to this budget. The committee has fulfilled its oversight responsibilities with due diligence, and it is time to close the debate, move this forward, while looking towards earlier and deeper involvement in the new budget cycle. With that, I'm confident in recommending that the board approve the fiscal year 2025-2026 operating capital budgets, and pursuant to section 13.5 of the Neighbors Agreement 2024, direct staff to deliver the budget summaries to UBC for approval.
All right, and could I have a second?
I second the motion.
Seconded by Ron. Okay, so with that, now we open things up for questions and discussion. And thank you, Athena, for answering some of those questions in advance. Much appreciated. So are there other questions? Okay, and this is keeping in mind that there's been extensive conversation at the Finance Committee and elsewhere about this budget. I want to, before we move on to a vote, just thank Athena, all of the staff for their hard work on this budget, and also to the Finance Committee for the close reading that they've given to this budget and all of the extensive questions. I attended the last Finance Committee meeting, so I know all of the extensive questions that they have asked related to the budget. So with that, I will call for a vote. The motion is that the board approve the fiscal year 2025-26 operating and capital budgets, and then the subsequent language about delivering it. All in favor? So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that seems to be all of the members present. So the budget passes unanimously. And thanks again for everyone for all your work on this. And it's an exciting year to come. And with that, we move down to the Q3 financial results report. And I'll pass things along to Athena to give the relatively good news on that front as well.
I think Sandy has her hand up. Do you have a question?
Thank you, Athena. We are online, easier to see, huh? Yeah, I have a following up comment is, could you please, Athena and your team, to put the answers I asked in our questionnaire, you will feedback to our residents. I suppose the answers in the attachment document will share with our residents, right?
Paul, do you want to speak to how we're going to respond to the residents? Yeah,
I'll speak to that. So we've compiled all of the questions that we've received from residents through the engagement. Those were all presented at committee, and we received any input that the committee had. We've made some perhaps minor edits and adjustments. So what we have done in past years is we provide individual responses to the individuals that have asked questions, and then we post the responses as kind of FAQs on our website. So we'll follow the same process now following the board's approval of the budget.
Great, thank you, Paul. And Athena, back to you on Q3 report.
Okay. So for our Q3 financial is before you. So I think there is nothing specifically stands out. I also have been working with the, thank you also for the Finance and Audit Committee. I've also been working with them. So we, unlike the other quarterly report that we have presented, so this year we added a performer and also a balance sheet in that. So to bring some more clarity and then transparency to our financial performance. So I really don't have anything more to add. Yeah, but I'm happy to answer any question that you might have.
Okay, are there any questions on the Q3 report?
I'll just make a comment. Athena put together a very good analysis of the comparatives and the projections. And I think this is very important for our planning, particularly putting together a balance sheet and some idea of what kind of financial position will be at the end of March. I'm not going to belabor it here, but we probably have some discretion going in the future here, okay, what we can do.
Yeah, just to be specific about what Ron was referring to, at least for now in the report, it notes a projected surplus at the end of the fiscal year, and but that it remains to be seen precisely. But the projection is there in the report, and it's important for us to bear that in mind. Thanks, Ron. Any other questions for Athena on the Q3 report? Okay, not hearing any. With thanks again, Athena, for your work and for joining us tonight from what I think is vacation. Much appreciated. And with that, we move to the Governance and Human Resources Committee update, and in particular, the UNA Board Rules of Procedure revisions. And Chris will introduce that report.
Just briefly, the report, of course, is before you with the details regarding the proposed revisions. These are fairly minor, focused largely on improving some of our conflict of interest management rules, largely within the setting of a board meeting. But with that, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so I'll note that this came before the Governance and Human Resources Committee, and it comes to this to the board with our recommendation of support. And so, given that, I will, as chair of that committee, make the motion that the board approve the proposed revisions to the board rules of procedures as circulated. Could I have a second? Jake, seconds. Okay, and with that, are there any questions or comments related to really the most substantive issue is the declaration of conflicts of interest at the start of board meetings? Jake?
Just one question. Does this make our job easier or not as easy?
Harder. Yeah. You want to?
I would suggest it makes the director's job easier. It just keeps that transparency item of conflict of interest in front of mind, perhaps more for the public than anything else, so the public is assured that the directors are keeping that in mind as part of the process.
I think, Jake, the answer to that is that the emphasis on us is to ask, do we have a conflict of interest? Okay, if we get the answer no, then we're fine.
Yeah, I think operationally it adds approximately 30 seconds to the start of the monthly board meeting, where the chair asks if there are any conflicts of interest anyone wants to report, or if conflicts have been reported in advance as well. But looking around the room and having people shake their head no if there aren't any, or report anything, I think it'll move pretty quickly. So thanks. Any other questions or comments? And I want to note that Yanbo has joined us. He's online, and welcome. Okay, I think we're ready for a vote, and I'll repeat the motion because Yanbo has just arrived. The motion is that the board approve the proposed revisions to the board rules of procedure as circulated. We're on item F4A. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. I think, yeah, it's unanimous, passes unanimously. All right, thanks everyone. And I'm going to note that we're aiming to adjourn the open session of the meeting by 7, and we're reasonably close to on track for that. And then at 7, we'll have an opportunity to have something to eat. With that, I want to next move to our item of new business. And this is the UNA US-Canada Products and Services Procurement issue, I'll call it. I'm going to turn things over to Evan to introduce this, and we can decide, and we can have some conversation about it as well, and then we can decide whether a motion is appropriate and what that motion might be. Evan?
Hello, everyone. I think everybody must have heard about the recent news that U.S. under the President Trump decided to lay 25% tariff to Canada, and also even more add too much pressure to Canadian people. I've been thinking for many years, we can't too depend on the U.S. The strong neighbors, because we have a lot of resources in our country. We have brilliant people. Just because last century, last 100 years, have been we have a nice relationship with the United States, and so that make us less independent. And so I think as our Prime Minister also advocated, we should bring more spend money on our own people, on our own product, right? Try to simulate our own business, local business. I think this is more like an attitude. So if we, united together, we, I don't know how much a real effect it can make, but at least make the whole world can see that Canada is we're proud Canadian, right? So we can be really tough and strong. We
Okay, so thanks, Evan. And I think we can open the floor for questions, discussions, ideas. I'm going to go in the order that I've seen the hands go up. So we'll start with Ron, then Jake, and go from there.
Okay. My first ancestor showed up on what is now Canada in 1635. He was the first apothecary. I've had relatives, ancestors fight in the War of 1812 and die in World War I and die in World War II. So I think I have a very strong roots. And to make it even more complicated, my maternal grandmother's name in Lakota is Minneota, which means sweet water. Yeah, what we're hearing down is total nuts. And what it really has not to do with tariffs, it has to do with the fact that Donald Trump deals in personalities. And Mexico got lucky because Obrador was no longer president. He hated Obrador because Obrador went public against him. He hates Justin, okay? And that's the motivation. He hates Justin because Justin ridiculed him in front of EU people and G7 people. So I think what we got to do is we got to be cool for a month or two to see exactly what happens with the tariffs, because our economy is so integrated with the US. To unravel it is unbelievable, okay? For example, we make a lot of raw aluminum here. In fact, Americans need our raw aluminum because they can't make enough themselves. But a lot of the cans that are made with aluminum are fabricated in the States and come back up to us. So it's not an easy thing. And then, Jake can talk about it even more detail than I can. So I think what we ought to do is, yeah, it's a PU one-off. Let's just wait and see what happens. Maybe when we get a new prime minister, things will cool off. And he's obviously violating his own agreement. He's using national security on the executive order, which is really broad. And imagine cars that are made in Ontario and Michigan go back and forth to parts across the border 20 times and get tariffed each time. Next thing you know, your basic Toyota Corolla will be $100,000 car.
I think Ron's comments also point to the complexities of figuring out, what is and is not American in terms of the goods, let alone Canadian. But Jake?
Yeah, I didn't really want to get into many specifics because that could go all different directions. I will make a comment, though, that in my working life outside of here, one of the companies and several of the companies that I know, the tariff situation is a company killer. And if we can't find solutions, a fair number of people would be losing their jobs. So it'll be interesting times for sure. The only question I wanted to bring up is, I don't know if Athena is still online. Okay.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay. You probably didn't have time as you've been away, but I had asked if it was possible to find out what the UNA has spent in either services or materials that would be purely US source, which I know is tough to do.
Maybe if, I'll take the question. I think is just to put it into context for us, we're a service organization. We're either providing services or we're purchasing services, and the vast majority of that is local. So we're either buying local services, whether that's our local contractors, and so we've done some quick analysis, and I would say more than 85% of our spending is in Canada. It's to Canadian folks buying Canadian services primarily. We do spend a portion of our budget on American goods. Primarily, that will be in the IT sphere and software, and many of those things are not replaceable because of systems are systems and all that sort of stuff. So that gives you a general sense of where it is, but because of what we do and what we provide to the community, it's very much a service base, so it's very much local spends.
Michael?
I'm American, but I live here. I'm a permanent resident. I'm going to apply for citizenship, and I very much agree with this sentiment that I think that we should be focusing more inward. The UNA has, as Paul pointed out, kind of its limited resources and its scope and its reach, but maybe we could make a recommendation again to campus and community planning where actually the building materials and the architectural services and the services that actually build the buildings that are going up around campus have a much larger impact, whether they come from Canadian sources and local sources. So that might be something to maybe make more of a recommendation than anything else. As these buildings get built, these 39-story towers and things like that, to maybe look more at Canadian sources of materials and things of that nature, because that's going to have a much larger fiscal impact on purchasing local than anything else that we could possibly do in the UNA.
I think Evan wanted to follow up.
Yes, I just want to add something. Try to think about, for example, it's a job hiring opportunity to consider, support the local business and the local employer, and also we can also find some something more like a symbolic, right? Like for example, if we hold an event and we're gonna purchase a lot of gifts or something, try to use a Canadian local brand, right? So I think like a UNA, what UNA can do is it can be like standards like for because we have a UBC here and lots of like province prime minister also live here, and so can have like example to encourage more people to support Canada. Yeah.
Ron?
Okay. Should they come to pass that these these tariffs get implemented, there's one area that we can encourage. We can encourage our neighborhood, our people to do something personally. Okay, and we've discussed with Joyce and myself because we had a big trip planned in December. We have a phenomenally big tourism deficit with the U.S. because Canadians need to go to southern places in the winter. You know, Maui, you know, Southern California, Florida, etc. We should be encouraging people, don't travel to the States. And these areas, ironically, will suffer unemployment-wise. If, you know, South Florida, if the Canadians didn't show up from Montreal and Toronto, they'd be in an economic crisis. That's our best thing. Don't travel to the States. Don't spend $1 down there. Okay? Go to Europe, go to South America, you know, go to Asia. And that's what we got to encourage our people. You have a personal choice. We're talking about services here. This is, you know, even Air Canada and WestJet are noticing that right now.
So thanks all. I think from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like a motion is necessarily needed here, although if anyone does wish to make a motion, they are welcome to. But from what I'm hearing is a kind of general direction that it's when possible, it's best to source our materials and our services locally, or if not locally, then Canadian. But regardless, that, you know, there's a kind of this a general impetus to try to do that without having a specific policy in place, which sounds like it would be not just very complex, but also have perhaps unintended consequences for the organization. So with that, I will ask if anyone still would like to make a motion. Not hearing that, I think it's great that we had this conversation, and I really appreciate the sentiments involved. And I would just add one other thing is that we do as an organization have a commitment to sustainability as one of our key strategic goals. And so, you know, sustainable procurement also means whenever possible local procurement. And so our discussion here is something that we can extend even more broadly, that when possible, it's really best for us to use local products and services to have the lowest impact, as well as to have this additional political value in the times that we're in now. All right, so with that, at almost 7, we have come to the end of our open meeting business. And what I'm going to do before we adjourn for dinner, I'm going to make the motion that the board adjourn into a closed session. And there's a lot more wording, but I'm not going to read it all. And so is there a second for the motion? They're seconded by Ron. All in favor? Okay, it looks like it's unanimous. Okay. And with that, I'd like to call a 15-minute break. So we'll resume the closed session. I'll start to call us back together at 7:15, but let's just say, like, you know, 7:17 will be the precise moment of opening the closed session. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. 7:17. I
Swiss train.
Yeah. Well, I'm very cognizant that the campus coming, and I did tell Carol that we were leaving for 7:15. So,